Chapter Philosophy of Life, Part 1.
I had been this man's guest 3 times. He lives in a district of prestigious dachas outside Moscow. His 2 sons, who hold fairly high state posts, built a large 2-story home for their elderly father and hired a housekeeper to look after the house and their father. They check in on their father at best on his birthday. His name is Nikolai Fyodorovich, and he is over 70. His legs are weak, so he spends nearly all his time in his imported wheelchair. Half of the enormous house's first floor, furnished in the best European style, is taken up by his library, which has a large number of books in different languages. The books, primarily on philosophical topics, are expensive editions. Before retiring, Nikolai taught philosophy at a prestigious Moscow university and holds advanced degrees. When he got older, he moved into this house and spent nearly all his time reading and thinking in his library. I met him thanks to the persistence of his housekeeper Galina, who came to one of my readers' conferences. Now I am grateful to her for this introduction. Nikolai had read my books about Anastasia, and it was interesting to talk with him. Despite his academic degrees, this old man could explain in simple, intelligible language what was not always understandable in Anastasia's statements, or discover new facets in them. After my 3rd book, The Dimension of Love, came out, the Secretariat of the City of Vladimir's Anastasia Foundation passed on to me several letters in which different leaders of certain religious confessions spoke out in very aggressive form against Anastasia. They called her a fool and a scoundrel, and one even wrote a long letter filled with obscenities. I could not understand why Anastasia had suddenly evoked in some leaders of religious confessions out-and-out aggression, and I sent several such letters on to Nikolai Fyodorovich for him to express his opinion. 2 months later, after seeking me out in my hotel, his housekeeper Galina showed up and began asking me agitatedly and exigently to go immediately to see Nikolai and talk with him, because she was worried about his health. It was hard to withstand the pressure from Galina. Nikolai's housekeeper is a woman of large and luxuriant build, not fat, but simply a big and physically strong Russian woman of 40 or 45. She had lived most of her life in a Ukrainian village and worked as a tractor driver and cattle farm worker. She's a good cook, knows her herbs, and is very neat. When she's upset, she speaks with a strong Ukrainian accent. I don't know how Nikolai Fyodorovich's sons found her to become a nurse for their father, but it was strange to watch the old intellectual professor of philosophy interacting with the poorly educated countrywoman. Galina lived in one of the rooms of his house. It would have been fine if she had just taken care of the housekeeping, which she did well, but she had to listen to what Nikolai and I were talking about. She had to pick up work somewhere nearby, start dusting somewhere, and also commenting out loud as if talking to herself on what she was hearing. This time Galina came for me in the Niva automobile Nikolai's sons had bought so that she could drive to town for food, to the forest for herbs, and for medicines for their father. Setting aside my work, I went with her. When we were driving through Moscow, Galina was silent because it was tense driving through the city. A drop of sweat even formed on her forehead until she reached the loop road. Once she had come out on the familiar highway, Galina said,
"Oof, we made it out."
After that, she drove more freely and started telling me quickly about her worries, mixing Ukrainian and Russian.
He was so peaceful. He sat for days at a time in his wheelchair, reading his books, thinking. In the morning, I'd give him some hot buckwheat cereal and oatmeal. I'd feed him and perhaps go to the market, or at least to the forest to gather herbs that are good for your health. I could go with a calm heart, knowing he would think his thoughts in his chair or read a book. Now, everything is different. I brought him the letters you sent. He read them. Before 2 days passed after he'd read them, he said to me, "Take some money, Galina Nikiforovna, and go buy the books about Anastasia. And then, when you go to the market, don't hurry home. Stay at the market and observe people. When you see someone who is sad or ill, give him a book." That's what I did. I did it twice, but he still could not calm down. "Don't hurry for dinner time, Galina Nikiforovna," he says. I'll feed myself if I get hungry. But I always got back for dinner anyway. A few days ago I came back from the market and stopped into his back room to give him some broth to drink. I looked and his wheelchair was empty, and he was lying on the carpet face down. I went to the phone, picked up the receiver to call the doctors the way his sons told me. They gave me a special number, not one everyone else has. I dialed it. "Help! Help!" I shouted into the phone, and he lifted his head from the carpet and said to me, "Cancel your call, Galina Nikiforovna." I'm fine. I'm doing physical exercises, pushing up from the floor. I leapt over to him, lifted him in one try from the floor and put him in his chair. How could he get up from the floor himself with his sick legs? "What exercises?" I said to him, "when a person is lying on the floor and not moving?" And he replied, "I've already done my exercises and was just resting. You shouldn't have worried." The next day he climbed out of his chair himself and onto the floor again for his exercises. That's when I bought him weights. No, not weights, it's called an expander. It has handles and elastics. If you want, you attach one elastic to make the exercise easier to do, and if you want, 4 when you get the strength. I bought him an expander, and he still would get up from his chair, just like a foolish child. After all, his heart's not so young anymore. And since it's not, you shouldn't do anything hard right away. You need the stamina. But he's like a foolish child. It's nearly 5 years since I've been working for him, and nothing like it has ever happened before. Even I don't know what's going on inside me now. Talk to him. Tell him to take it easy with his exercises because people love him. Tell him to build up his stamina.
When I walked into Nikolai Fyodorovich's spacious study, the fireplace was lit. The old philosophy professor was sitting, not as usual, in his wheelchair, but at a large desk, writing and drawing something. Even his outward appearance spoke to the changes that had taken place in him. He wasn't wearing his robe as usual, but a shirt and tie. He greeted me more energetically than usual, quickly offered me a chair, and immediately, without any introductory "how are you" and so on, began speaking. This time Nikolai spoke heatedly and energetically.
"Do you know what beautiful times are coming on Earth, Vladimir? I would like to live on an Earth like that, not die. I read the correspondence with the swearing at Anastasia. Thank you for sending it to me. I realized a great deal thanks to it. They're calling the tiger hermit Anastasia a sorceress and a witch, but she is the greatest warrior. Yes, imagine Anastasia is the greatest warrior of the forces of light. It will be up to our descendants to understand her importance and magnitude. The human consciousness, the intellect and emotions in the tales, epics and legends that have come down to us could not even imagine the greatness of this warrior. Just don't be surprised, please, Vladimir. Don't put yourself on your guard, as is your habit regarding Anastasia. She is a human being as well, a woman with absolutely the entire human essence, with all the feminine weaknesses and virtues and the maternal predestination, but she is simultaneously a great warrior. Just a second. I'll try to explain myself in a less muddled fashion. It's all contained in her philosophical conception. On this shelf of my study, you see many books, Vladimir. These are the philosophical works of thinkers of various eras and various parts of the world.
Gesturing to his bookshelves, Nikolai Fyodorovich enumerated them.
Classical rhetoric that speaks about the vital, animated body of the cosmos. Next to it, what was written about Socrates, since he himself wrote nothing. Here to the right, Lucretius, Plutarch, and Marcus Aurelius. A little lower on the shelves, the 5 long poems by Nizami Ganjevi. After that, Arani, Descartes, Franklin, Kant, Laplace, Hegel, and Stendhal. Everyone was attempting to learn the essence of things, to touch the laws of the universe. This is what Durant said about them. The history of philosophy is essentially an account of the efforts great men have made to avert social disintegration by building up natural moral sanctions to take the place of the supernatural sanctions which they themselves have destroyed. The great thinkers have tried to approach the concept of the absolute, each in his own way. Philosophical trends that resemble religions have arisen out of their philosophical concepts and died. As a result, having vanquished timid efforts at resistance, the dominant concept in our life has been, to put it briefly, the concept of subordination to some supreme intellect. It doesn't matter where it is, in the limitless expanses of the universe are localized in the essence of an individual human soul. What is important is something else. What is important is the predominance over all of the concept of subordination and worship. Then come the particulars. Subordination to a teacher, a mentor, a ritual. I have the predictions of Nostradamus on these shelves as well. Taken together, they form a philosophical concept. Man is transitory. Man is amoral and insignificant. He has much to learn. This concept is exactly what has been twisting and destroying the human soul. An adherent to this concept cannot be happy. No person on earth can be happy given the dominance of a concept like this in the human consciousness. It looms over both philosopher and the person who has never had any contact with philosophical works. It looms over the newborn child and the old man. It even looms over the fetus in its mother's womb. There are many adherents of this concept today. They have existed at various times. Today, their followers instill the human community with the frailty and insignificance of the human essence. But no, other times are at hand. For me, the words from God, which Anastasia conveyed, were like a blaze of light. You wrote them down, Vladimir, and I remember them. When Adam asked God, "Where is the universe's edge? What will I do when I come to it? When will I fill everything myself and create what I have imagined?" God answered his son and all of us, my son. The universe is a thought. The dream was born out of a thought. It is partially visible in matter. When you reach the edge of everything, your thought will discover a new beginning and continuation. A beautiful new birth will arise out of nothing, reflecting you and your aspirations, soul and dream. My son, you are infinite, you are eternal, your creative dreams are in you. The greatest, all-clarifying, philosophically all-embracing, precise and laconic answer. It stands above all the philosophical definitions put together. You see, Vladimir, I have many books here on the shelves of my library, but I do not have the main book, the one that is immeasurably more precious than all the philosophical works ever published put together. Many have seen this book, but few have been given to read it. The language of this book cannot be studied, but it can be felt.
What language is this?
The language of God, Vladimir. I remember what Anastasia said about it. There are so many words with different meanings among earthly nations, so many dissimilar languages and dialects, and there is one language for all, one language of divine appeals for all. It is woven from the rustling of leaves, the singing of birds, and the waves. The divine language has smells and color. God gives a prayerful answer in this language to each request and prayer. Anastasia feels and understands this language, but what about us? How could we have failed to notice it for centuries? Logic. Iron logic speaks to the fact that if God created the earth and the living nature around us, then the grasses, trees, clouds, water, and stars are nothing but his materialized thought. But not only do we pay no attention to them, we trample, break, and spoil them, all the while speaking about faith. What faith? Who do we in fact worship? The succession of secular rulers, no matter what temples they've erected, will be remembered by their descendants only for the dirt they had to take from them. Water is the criterion for everything, but with each passing day the water gets dirtier and dirtier. That is what Anastasia said. Only the greatest philosopher could speak like that, and it is up to all of us to give it careful thought. Think, Vladimir. Any structure, even if it is religious, is frail, as is religion itself. Religions come and go, and when they go, they take their temples and philosophies with them. Water has existed since the world's creation, as have we. For the most part, we too consist of water.
Nikolai Fyodorovich, why do you consider Anastasia's definitions the most correct?
Because they are taken from the main book, and their logic, Vladimir, is a philosophical logic. There is the previous phrase in the name of God, where to all beings of the universe to the question, "What do you desire so ardently?" God answered, joint creation and joy for all from its contemplation. A brief phrase, just a few words. God's aspiration and desire is expressed in just a few words. None of the great philosophers were ever able to provide a more precise and accurate definition. Reality must define itself, Anastasia said. Let every parent who loves his children determine whether he isn't dreaming of the same thing. Who of us, the sons and daughters of God, would not want joint creation with our children and joy from its contemplation? Anastasia's philosophical definitions hold the greatest power and wisdom. They are fateful for humanity. They are effective. The horde foretelling the darkness will try to resist them. Nonetheless, they will manifest themselves, and not only in the way they have in the curses aimed at Anastasia, they will manifest themselves variously. Numbers of feeble prophets, having gathered a handful of followers, will trumpet the supposed truth to people too lazy to think independently. Anastasia said about them previously, "O you who call yourselves teachers of human souls, cool your ardor now, and let everyone know that the Creator gives each person everything from the beginning, and each person has the truth in his soul from the beginning. All he needs to do is shut the great creations off from the darkness of postulates and fictions. It is they who are attacking Anastasia, because Anastasia is devastating their ideas. Her philosophical conception calls off the end of the world, and this is our present reality. We are witnesses to and participants in the most beautiful accomplishments. We are on the threshold of a new millennium. We are entering a new reality. We are already living in that reality."
Wait a minute, Nikolai Fyodorovich. I didn't understand the part about reality and actions. Let's say one philosopher said something, and a second. Anastasia also says it. So, what do reality and actions have to do with this? Just the words are the same. Philosophers speak, but life itself takes its own course.
The life of any human community has always been built, as it is now, under the influence of philosophical concepts. The Israelites' philosophy is one way of life, the Crusaders' philosophy another. Hitler had his own philosophy, and here, under Soviet rule, we had ours. A revolution is nothing but the replacement of one philosophical concept by another. But these are all specifics conditioned by the confines of the scope. What Anastasia has already created is more global. It has an effect on the human community as a whole and on each of its members separately. She said, "I will carry people across the dark forces span of time." She did that, Vladimir. She laid a bridge across the abyss for each person, and each is himself free to walk across it or not. I'm a philosopher, Vladimir. I can see this well now. And, what is more important, I can feel it. On the threshold of the new millennium, her philosophical concept has blazed up like a vivid ray. Each person acts through his deeds every hour, one way or another, depending on his philosophical convictions. If one's philosophical convictions change, so do one's actions. Here, for example, I was sitting in my study, rereading various philosophical works, and pitying all humanity, which was moving inexorably toward its death. I wondered where my sons and grandsons would bury me, whether they went to my funeral, or whether it would be too much trouble for my grandsons to come see their grandfather. I pitied all humanity and thought about my own death. Then came Anastasia with her completely different philosophical concept, and my actions are different.
How, for example, are your actions different?
Like this. Right now, I'm going to stand up and begin to act thanks to this new philosophical concept.
Nikolai leaned on the table and holding onto an armchair and shelf, with difficulty, but nonetheless on his weak legs, walked over to one of the bookshelves. He examined the titles on the book spines, and then pulled out a book in an expensive binding and headed for the fireplace, holding on to different furniture in his study. He reached the fireplace, tossed the book he'd taken off the shelf into the flame, and announced,
Those were Nostradamus's predictions about all kinds of cataclysms and the end of the world. Do you remember what Anastasia said? Vladimir, you should remember them, as I did. Nostradamus, you did not predict the dates of terrible cataclysms for the earth. You created them through your thought and engaged human thought to embody something terrible. Even now they are hovering over the earth, frightening people with despair. Only the greatest philosopher could say that. someone who understands that a prediction is nothing but a modeling of the future. The more people believe in the universal end, the greater the number of human thoughts will begin modeling it, and it will come to pass. It might come to pass because human thought is material, and it can create something material. Entire sects at different ends of the world set themselves on fire, and do so believing in the end. They live believing in the predictions. However, she, defying despair, destroys the thought of the world's end by saying, "But it will not come to pass now, so let your thought do battle with mine. I am human being. I am Anastasia, and I am stronger than you." She also says, "All the evil on earth, leave your affairs behind and rush toward me. Do battle with me, just try, and also with my ray I will burn up the host of age-old postulates in one instant." She went out alone to battle the countless hordes. Against the millions of those who are modeling the demise of all humanity, she came out to do battle. At the same time, she does not want to draw us into the battle. She merely wants us to be happy, which is why she says in her prayer to God, "The coming ages shall all live in your dream, and so it shall be. I want this so. I am your daughter, my Father, who is everywhere." And she will have her way. Her philosophy is unusually powerful. The coming ages will all live in the divine dream, in beautiful heavenly gardens, and she will not distract anyone with her memory. They will not erect monuments to her and remember her when it becomes clear to everyone where what is truly human lies. People will revel in the divine condition and will not remember her. But flowers will bloom in different gardens, and among them one beautiful flower will be called Anastasia. I am old, but I want to be her foot soldier today. Vladimir, you say philosophy is nothing but words, but my heart received these words, uttered somewhere far away in the taiga, with delight, and here you have before you concrete, material actions. It is not humanity that is burning in the fire, but the predictions of humanity's demise. This is why adherents of that demise have become agitated and closed ranks. Those who have built their own philosophy on this, who have blackmailed people with the supposedly inevitable end of the world, have become agitated.
Hasn't anyone spoken out against the end of the world before Anastasia?
There have been timid and thus insignificant attempts. No one paid them any mind. No one has ever spoken the way she has before. Human hearts have never accepted anyone's words with such readiness and joy. No other philosophical concept has ever drawn people to it like this. But hers is drawing people. It is vanquishing a host of ages-old postulates. How she has done this is not for us to sort out yet. There is also an unusual rhythm in her words and a great logic and maybe something else as well. Maybe, yes, undoubtedly. This sentence of hers, "He who creates shone with some new energy and spoke in a new way about what we see each day." Undoubtedly, a new energy has appeared in the universe, and more new people of our era have begun to possess it. The fact is that it usually takes decades, perhaps even centuries, to disseminate a significant philosophical concept. But in mere years, she has accomplished this. It's stunning. Vladimir, you thought her words were simply words, but her words are so powerful that these hands here, even my old hands, are making her words come to life. And the end of the world is burning up in the flame. Life will continue. These very hands might still help life continue, the hands of Anastasia's foot soldier.
Holding on to furniture, Nikolai walked over to the table and picked up a water pitcher. Leaning one hand on the wall, he headed for the window with difficulty, slowly, but he reached the window where there was a handsome pot. A very small green shoot was growing out of the dirt in the pot.
There, it's come up at last, my little cedar. And now these hands of mine will water it, making the words close to my heart real.
Nikolai leaned sideways toward the windowsill, picked up the water pitcher with both hands and spoke.
I hope the water isn't too cold for you.
He thought a moment, took some water into his mouth, held it there briefly, and leaning on the windowsill, released the water from his mouth in a thin stream onto the dirt next to the green shoot. Galina was in the study during our conversation. The whole time she kept inventing something to do in order to stay in the study. First she brought tea, Then she started dusting, all the while softly muttering to herself, commenting on what she had heard and seen. She commented more loudly on Nikolai's last actions.
What good are these crazy ideas? Here, good people can only wonder. Why are you starting all this bother in your old age? He won't use his wheelchair, his old legs bother him, and he's forcing his weak legs to walk. Why can't people be satisfied with their life? It's warm and comfortable in their house, but they're always lacking something. All this is never enough.
I remembered Galina, worried about Nikolai's health, asking me to caution him, only now I didn't understand what from, so I asked, "What have you come up with, Nikolai Fyodorovich?"
I have a big request for you, Vladimir. I just ask you to have some respect for an old man.
Tell me, and if I can, I'll carry out your request.
I heard you were planning to assemble people wishing to start construction of an ecological settlement. You want to petition the authorities for them each to have a hectare of land to set up a homestead.
Yes, I am. The Foundation has already written applications and submitted them to administrations in several provinces. But the issue of allocating land has not yet been decided. They're giving out small allotments for a few families, but there have to be at least 150 at once, otherwise you can't build infrastructure.
They will allocate the land, Vladimir, without fail.
That would be good, but what is your request?
When they start allocating land for homesteads, and they definitely will in every region of Russia, I beg you, Vladimir, not to refuse an old man. Accept me as well into this community of people. I too want to set up my own piece of homeland before I die.
Nikolai was getting very worked up and began speaking heatedly and quickly.
Set it up for myself, for my children and grandchildren. I'm growing this little cedar here in a pot so that I can plant the sapling with my own hands on a piece of my homeland. I won't be a burden to people. I'll set up everything on my hectare myself, lay out an orchard, plant a living fence. I will be able to help my neighbors. I have savings and fees for various articles keep coming in. My sons, no matter what, they never refuse me material assistance. I'll build myself a small house there and finance construction for my neighbors.
That's all we need.
Galina spoke up even louder than before.
How can anyone think about planting an orchard when his legs don't even go? He's even planning to help his neighbors. Oh, if only good people could hear. What would good people think? His sons built him such a house. Live and rejoice. Thank your sons and God. The man is set on this. Imagine coming up with an idea like this in his old age. What can good people think about someone like that?
Nikolai heard what Galina said, but ignored it or pretended to ignore it and went on.
Vladimir, I realize my decision might be viewed as excessively emotional, but that's not true. My decision is the fruit of extensive contemplation. Only outwardly might my life seem beautiful. A home with all the conveniences, practically a palace, a housekeeper, sons of some status in society. But in fact I was dead before I became acquainted with Anastasia. Yes, Vladimir, that's right. Imagine I've been living here more than 4 years. I spend my time mainly in my study, and no one needs me. I can have absolutely no influence on anything. The same fate awaits both my sons and grandsons, the fate of sensing one's own death during one's lifetime. A man is considered dead, Vladimir, when he stops breathing. But that is not so. A man dies as soon as no one needs him and nothing depends on him. The neighbors around my house have simpler little houses, but I have no friends among them. My sons even ask me not to give the neighbors my last name. Many jealous people around wonder whose house, more like a palace, this is. When they find out whose it is, the press will start investigating what funds were used to build it. And you won't be able to prove they were earned by your own hard work. Here I am, sitting here as if imprisoned, as if I were already dead, sitting in my study on the second floor, and I don't get up because there's no point. I have had many of my works on philosophical topics published, but after getting to know Anastasia, I will tell you right now, Vladimir, and please don't consider what I've said to be the fruit of an old man's imaginings. I will prove the correctness of the following conclusion. You understand, Vladimir, it is right now, at this very moment, that the divine judgment is being made.
Judgment, but where and how? Why doesn't anyone know about it?
You understand, Vladimir, for a very long time we imagined this judgment as some ominous being coming from on high with his terrifying army. This being would tell each person in what ways each person was righteous and which ways he wasn't. Then he would determine a measure of punishment, sending those judged to hell or heaven. We had imagined the divine judgment so primitively. But God is not primitive. He cannot judge in that way. He gave man eternal freedom, but any judgment is tantamount to violence against the individual and the deprivation of his freedom.
Then why did you say then that the divine judgment is taking place at the present moment?
I repeat what I said. The divine judgment is taking place at the present moment, but each person must judge himself. I have understood what Anastasia created. Her philosophy, strength and logic are accelerating processes. Imagine many believing her, Vladimir, and implementing her idea of beautiful divine settlements. Those who have believed will find themselves in a heavenly garden. Others will not believe and remain right where they are now. Everything in the world is relative. For now, it does not seem possible that we might compare our life with another, and we think that our life is bearable. But when a different life is nearby, when those who did not believe come to understand, then they will see themselves in hell. Some consider themselves lucky merely because they don't know just how unlucky they are. It is right now that a divine judgment is underway that is unusual for our understanding. This is not my discovery alone. A psychologist from Novosibirsk who has done research on the reaction of various groups of Anastasia's statements has said basically the same thing. The psychologist and I are acquainted, and I have read her published conclusions, and they are similar to mine. People from various cities sense the grandeur of what is happening. Professor Eryomkin, whose poems have been published in a national anthology, speaks in magnificent verse about the Anastasia phenomenon. I will remind you, Vladimir, of the poems dedicated to Anastasia. In you I saw man, from the end of another era, perhaps, where my grandchildren shall stand among goddesses, your embodiment. I memorized these beautiful lines. I want my grandchildren to live among goddesses too, and so I want to provide them with this opportunity and begin to set up a small piece of our beautiful homeland for them. Buying land, and not just 1 hectare, is not the problem for me, but who will live in the vicinity is of great importance. This is why I want to set up my land among people of like mind, set it up for my grandchildren. One of them will certainly want to live there, and my sons will want to come to their father's beautiful garden to relax from the hustle and bustle. Right now they visit me very rarely, but they would come to a garden I laid out. I will ask to be buried in this garden. My sons will come. I am speaking about my grandchildren and my sons, but above all it is I who needs to create what is inherent in the human essence. Otherwise, understand, Vladimir, suddenly I wanted to live and act. I will be able to. I will be a foot soldier lined up for Anastasia.
You could very well live right here too. Why not live here nice and quietly?
This time Nikolai decided to respond to what she said. He turned and addressed her.
I understand your concern, Galina Nikiforovna. You're afraid of losing your job and your roof. Please don't worry. I will help you build a small house nearby, and you will have your own little house and your own land. You'll get married, you'll find your intended.
Suddenly straightening to her full height, Galina threw down on the magazine table the white rag she had been supposedly dusting that table with during our conversation, put her hands on her ample hips, and was about to say something but couldn't. It was as if her indignation had taken the breath from her, and then she gathered her forces and spoke very softly.
Maybe I don't want to be a neighbor to a neighbor like that. I can build my own house for myself when I get my land. I used to help my father deal with the felling when I was a girl, and I've tucked away a tidy little sum. But this job here is not to my liking. Who do I keep house for day in and day out on these floors? No one is ever there, and I'm keeping house like a fool. I don't want to be neighbors with slow-witted neighbors.
Galina suddenly turned sharply and walked quickly to her room. But soon after, the door to her room opened wide. Galina was holding 2 small pots in which there were green shoots, like the one in Nikolai's handsome pot. She walked over to the window and put her little pots next to it on the windowsill. Then she returned to her room and brought back a large basket filled with many small rag bundles. She placed the basket at Nikolai's feet and said,
These are seeds. They're real because I spent a whole fall and summer collecting them in the forest from all kinds of real healing herbs. The ones they sow in fields to sell to pharmacies don't have the same strength. Scatter them with your own hand on your land. They will multiply your health and strength, both when they grow and when you drink an infusion of them in winter. But your little cedar is going to be bored alone. It shouldn't be alone. There are its friends and brothers.
Galina pointed to the window where 3 pots of shoots now stood and walked slowly to the door, tossing out as she went.
Goodbye and good luck, philosophers. You may know the philosophy of death, but you still need to study the philosophy of life.
Join us for the next segment of Who Are We? Book 5 of the Ringing Cedar series. Philosophy of Life Part 2.